today on the Tearsheet Podcast.
Yeah, Sunrise Banks, they were a great partner. They understand technology and worked with us, very closely to launch our product. We went from kind of first meeting, first conversation to kind of a launch product within 6 days. So
Wow.
in between there, we had, you know, vendor validation. We had all of those steps, and it was a kind of a whirlwind week, I would say.
Welcome to the Tearsheet Podcast. I'm Zack Miller. The government aid program in the U.S., called PPP, continues to put a strain on the banking sector. We're hearing an increasing number of stories of how traditional institutions are partnering with fintechs to navigate through the crisis. Anvil is one of those fintechs servicing traditional banks and FIs. The company, which replaces PDF forms with online workflows, collaborated with Sunrise Banks to help the Minneapolis-based bank process $134 million in PPP loans in just 5 days for 1,600 small businesses. Anvil also closed a recent funding round that saw Citi Ventures and Gradient Ventures, Google's AI-focused fund, participate. Anvil founder and CEO Mang-Git Ng joins me on the Tearsheet Podcast today.
Hi, my name is Mang-Git Ng. I am the co-founder and CEO of Anvil Foundry Inc. And I run day-to-day operations at Anvil.
So first, let's tell the listeners a little bit about what Anvil does. And I want to know how you got here, really.
Yeah, absolutely. So what Anvil does is we are a paperwork automation platform. We help businesses take their existing paperwork process and convert it into online workflows that can be shared via link. And it really simplifies the paperwork preparation, signature, and data gathering aspects.
So really, any onboarding, I guess, in financial services, or if there's an agent involved, I guess or a broker. I assume there's a sequence there as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So for within financial services, account opening, mortgage processing, anytime that a agent has to capture information from a client and then use that information to complete a series of forms or get those forms signed. That's something that Anvil can help with.
Awesome. So we'll hop into that in a second. But first, Mang-Git, I want to understand where this idea came from. Why you? Why now? Why Anvil?
Yeah,
Yeah, lots of
absolutely.
questions.
So lots of questions. So my background has been in software engineering. I've always worked as a software engineer or in product in the Silicon Valley area at various tech startups. And the kind of why now, or what led me to this problem, was really back in 2017, I believe. I was applying for a mortgage with my wife, and the process just seemed very cumbersome. A lot of the data was being passed across email. Some of the banks had websites, but it didn't save the information as I filled it out and actually lost all the information. And then there was just a very ad hoc way of gathering data and then sending it over a insecure channel. So I thought there must be a better way to do this. And that was very much from a consumer perspective. But when we kind of dug into the problem, we found that there was actually a much larger issue where financial institutions like banks are actually processing a lot of these on a day-to-day basis. And so there was just a lot of work and overhead for an individual at a bank to actually accept the information and make sure all the information goes to where it needs to go. So we kind of changed our perspective a little bit when we started building the company. Instead of building a product for consumers, we decided it was better to build the same product for business users, where they can really benefit from small operational efficiency gains, as opposed to a consumer who does it that fills out forms only episodically.
I got that. That makes a lot of sense. What about is there also replication of data within banks and I guess other financial institutions? Are they keying in this information multiple times? Are you addressing that as well with Anvil?
Yeah, absolutely. So once we capture the information on Anvil's kind of like online form, the data is actually stored digitally in a machine readable format so that it can be sent directly to your CRM system, your core banking system, whatever system you need the information to live in. And we think of the paperwork really as just one of the areas that we can push information. We can push information onto a PDF and then send that PDF for signature. But anywhere else that you're keying in this data, you can grab a copy of it either over API or pre-built integrations that Anvil already has.
So like mortgage application postcards, theoretically.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. So can we talk about, I know you just had an announcement with Sunrise based in Minneapolis,
Yeah.
getting on your platform. Can you talk about sort of what they launched with and what that relationship looks like?
Yeah, so the first workflow that we launched with Sunrise is actually the Paycheck Protection Program application. So when we started working with them, obviously fairly recently, when the second round of financing was coming through for the Paycheck Protection Program. And what we did was we helped them create a online workflow that they can share directly with small business owners to fill out the information. Anvil was actually collecting all of the information from the small business owners, including supporting documents. And as soon as the information was collected, Anvil would automatically generate a completed version of the Paycheck Protection Program PDF application, ask the clients for signatures, and then immediately call Sunrise Banks systems to say, hey, here's all the data, here's the signed document, and then they can kind of kick off their internal review process using that information. And it was all automated without the need of a agent actually getting in contact with an individual to complete the application process.
And how long did it take for them? I mean, I know it sounds like a simple thing, but I know how complicated it is for a bank to come up with a form and publish a form. Like, how long did it take them to launch?
Yeah, Sunrise Banks, they were a great partner. They understand technology and worked with us, very closely to launch our product. We went from kind of first meeting, first conversation to kind of a launch product within 6 days. So
Wow.
in between there, we had, vendor validation. We had all of those steps, and it was kind of a whirlwind week, I would say.
Amazing, and congrats on that deal. And we know from our reporting that PPP applications, the volumes were massive for most banks, and this enabled them to get up and running in 6 minutes and be able in 6 days, and to be able to take those applications. What would they have done if they didn't go with Anvil? Like, how would they have addressed this?
Yeah, I think the typical bank application process, at least what we found, was they would post a link to the PDF application online and ask clients to download the PDF, fill it out by hand, sign it, and then email it in or mail it in some cases. I think, which kind of goes back to the initial reason we started Anvil, which is it's very insecure to do all of this over email. So I'm not sure if that was the process that Sunrise would have taken, but I do think that they are a little bit more tech forward than the average bank. So I think they would have found a more digital solution. But I think the nice part about Anvil's workflow was we were able to customize it to their existing process, their existing internal system, so that it could really streamline the workflow from not just application, but all the way, the downstream processes that need to happen.
And volume wise, I saw in the press release was something like over $130 million of loans and 5 days for 1,600 small businesses. That's a lot of volume.
Yeah, it was it was exciting times for us. I think we were all watching our servers and making sure everything was running smoothly. It was a lot of fun.
And Mang-Git, like, what did you learn, I guess, from deploying with Sunrise that I guess you can take forward as you go and go deeper into the financial services industry with your tools?
Yeah, I think the flexibility and the speed at which Anvil can adapt to existing banking processes. I think the way we initially developed this workflow was we built a base version of the Paycheck Protection Program application and shared a video of it with banks. Little did I know the level of customization and even some things as small as changing the wording to meet compliance. little did I know that how important and how much of that would need to happen in order for us to launch a product and for Sunrise Banks. So I think that's something I definitely learned a lot, kind of on the fly, I would say, as we were deploying.
Interesting. And who's typically the user inside a financial institution? Who are you selling that into? I mean, I guess whoever makes a decision to buy it may be different than the end user, but can you talk about sort of, I guess, how you navigate that?
Yeah, absolutely. So I guess the buyer or champion in this case, oftentimes, is somebody uh, tasked with streamlining business operations internally, and
Mm-hmm.
oftentimes it's a small bank. There'd be like a CIO, maybe a business lead, who really needs to kind of make their business processes faster. The end users oftentimes are the agents, the frontline agents. Those are the ones that are interacting with clients, and they are replacing their existing process of email and ad hoc phone calls and PDF attachments with an Anvil link. And so they're the ones that are actually interacting with our system. They understand how to use our system. They also understand how to navigate the Anvil dashboard to kind of track the progress of an application that's online, or kind of error handle anything that may arise with a client. So definitely two distinct sets of people. But I think I think oftentimes the business leaders see the value in but we really try to design the product and make it usable and easy for the end kind of frontline agent.
And I guess in designing the workflows, it's codeless, right? So like you don't need necessarily a technical background to be able to build these out.
Absolutely, yeah. So
Can you talk about that and the flexibility, I guess, in terms of how easy that is?
Yeah, I think absolutely. I think the way it works is you kind of take an existing PDF. Oftentimes these are PDFs that are dictated by the SBA, for example, and you upload it into Anvil, and Anvil will help you find all of the fields that need to be completed. And then based on that information, Anvil automatically generates a web form. From there, you can customize it further by moving fields around on the web form, change labels, add helper text, and break it up into multiple pages or steps, and then finally add signers to the end of the workflow. So I think we've built it to be pretty simple and easy to use, but at the same time, it's an extremely powerful tool and extremely flexible. So there are a bunch of features that we as Anvil will come in and help you create. Like we offer professional services to really customize the really complex items. So if there's really complicated logic, Anvil can help you implement that, and it's a very quick implementation on our end. Um, typically, we are brought in to help with the deployment process for things where there's a lot of very very complex rules around what forms need to be filled out and who needs to fill out which form. And for example, like the SBA packet, it comes with an application. The application comes with a set of instructions that are just as long as the application. Like, how do we get those rules into the workflow so that Anvil is validating and making sure that by the time somebody fills out that workflow, it's accurate and complete. So that's kind of how Anvil comes in and really helps with the complicated aspects of the workflow.
And how do customers pay for it? Is it sold as a SaaS?
It is sold as a SaaS. We typically work with customers to create a package that makes sense for them. The package includes transaction costs, platform costs, and then also kind of service and support if that's something that the customer wants.
Got it. And you also just raised the Series A. You want to tell us about that? And I'm curious to know. I mean, you have some investors in there that are very focused on financial services. I'm kind of curious to know, what so what their investment thesis is.
Yeah, absolutely. So we actually just announced our Series A funding last week. All the articles went out, and we brought on a good group of investors. We really enjoyed getting to know these guys. The lead was Gradient Ventures. They are the AI-focused Google investment arm. And then the co-lead, or who also participated, was Citi Ventures. They saw our product and really were able to apply it to a lot of the processes that they had internally at Citigroup. I think that was what really caught their attention. Citigroup, they are a large bank, and
Yeah.
they, like any financial services institution, they have a lot of paperwork that needs to be completed, and so they saw Anvil as a solution to those paperwork processes that are happening today.
Got it. Can we switch gears, I guess? I'm curious to see, like, the company's young, you're getting good traction. Congrats on the Sunrise deal, on the Series A. Like, what are you thinking about in terms of product and growth, like looking out into the future?
Yeah, on the growth side, I think we definitely need to scale up the team a little bit to support our customers. And part of that is building out our kind of forward deployment engineering team, support our customer support team. So there's a lot of work to be done there organizationally. Product wise, I think a lot of requests that we get are actually around data integration, and how do we get the data to where it needs to go so it doesn't need to be rekeyed. So building out a system that can make it extremely easy to integrate your software into our system would be kind of one big product area. I think other product areas that we're looking into, I know Gradient being an AI focused company, focused investor, one thing is, how can we leverage AI to better understand forms that get uploaded? I think there's a lot of nuance and a lot of just complexities around the instructions of a form. How can Anvil ingest that PDF and automatically understand the rules around filling out the form, and get that workflow set up all the faster? So I think there's a lot of work to be done on that. That's definitely a long-term vision kind of product view, but I think it's pretty exciting if machines can suddenly start understanding PDF forms that typically require a human to understand, or humans struggle to understand.
Yeah, that changes a lot of the workflow if there's that level of understanding on the front.
Yep.
We have time for one last question. I'm curious, just your personal path in terms of building, growing a company. Like, what have been your biggest challenges, and take us through the sort of how you're growing along with the company.
Yeah. I think I've worked at a couple startups pretty early as an employee, and you kind of watch the founders, lead the company, build the company, and you think, oh, one day I can do that. And then you actually become a founder, and you realize that there's so much that you didn't anticipate, even as like a employee number 7 at a small company. I think the biggest challenge, especially early on, is figuring out and defining product, or the problem, I should say, and the product to solve that problem. It's pretty unstructured, and so it's very much like I would imagine an academic scientist, where you have to do core science to understand the problem at its root, and then take that information and then come up with a solution to solve that problem. It's very unstructured, and every day you're kind of wandering around in the dark, trying to figure out what is the right thing to do. So I think that's something that was extremely challenging for us to begin with. And then really, I think my personal growth around that is really figuring out how to boil down problems to the root cause, and then really structure your thoughts around it so that it can be articulated with your co-founder or with the team, and then bringing the team together to head in a single direction. I think those are areas that I've grown in, and will hopefully continue to grow a lot in.
Awesome. And I would assume, and I don't want to make too big of an assumption, but having Citi Ventures, as an investor helps to, at least with the voice of the customer and maybe helps define with some of the challenges going forward. Is that true?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we've already had a couple of conversations with various business leads, kind of talking through their problems that they see within their business, and that helps us to better understand what is it that we're trying to solve.
Mang-Git, thank you for joining us on the Tearsheet Podcast today.
Thank you very much for having me.